Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Science, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms, your guide through the planets, stars, and other astrological events in our lives. So I'm back again with another episode, and we're going to talk about what's upcoming in March of 2025. So lots to get into with this particular month. It's actually really beginning a month of a very powerful period for humanity and very powerful transition. So, buckle up your seatbelts but also tap into the strong creative energy that's going to be coursing through our lives coming up here. All right. So this is episode 64 of Science, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. This is going to be an overview of an outlook of March 2025 and the astrological events that are taking place throughout the month. And there's going to be several focuses, or really, if we want to combine that, one particular focus for the majority of this month. And that has a lot to do with the Pisces-Aries exchange, the alchemy that's taking place. And that includes the eclipse season, though one of the eclipses is not in Pisces or Aries, but in the sign of Virgo. And we'll get into that here shortly. Okay, so to begin, these are the major things that we're going to be discussing here: Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, the eclipse season, the alchemy of Aries and Pisces, Neptune in Aries. So this will be the first time in over 13 years that Neptune is moving into a new sign, and the stellium that's taking place in Aries and Pisces. So all the collection of planets, which I'll share. There'll be a couple of images of natal charts for the eclipses, and so I'll share with all you what that looks like in the chart itself. This is a highly active month. It's one of the more powerful months that I've seen since I've been an astrologer, and the deeper connections into the Pisces and Aries alchemy that takes place. So, in astrology in general, two signs that are right next to each other have very little in common. So they are, um, very, very different. They're not the ones that are the most different from each other. Typically, those are the ones that are in a 150-degree relationship with each other, quincunx aspect, such as Sagittarius and Cancer, or Capricorn and let's see, that would be Capricorn, Cancer, Capricorn, Gemini. It's a good one there. So these are the ones that have even less in common. At least there's a little bit of a thread between Pisces and Aries that I'm gonna get into and share what that's about. So all the symbols that are on the screen right now have a really powerful role in the month of March and continuing into the month of April. So April, when I do a video for April at the end of March, it's really going to be a lot of it's going to be a continuation of what was going on in March, with the exception of the eclipse season, because that will have ended. At least the two eclipses that are going on, and the first eclipse season will have. The last one is on March 29th. There won't be another eclipse until September. All right. So an overview. So let's talk about this. So this is really the month that starts it all off. February 2025 was giving us a little bit of a glimpse, a window into what could be coming. But March and April are the one that period of time is really sort of how 2025 is really showing up for the planet. So the two most inner planets are going to be one of the major focuses here. Venus entered the sign of Aries, and Mercury does it on March 3rd. Venus entered in February, but both Venus and Mercury will be retrograding in the month of March, and that carry over to April. And there's going to be a lot of overlap. So meaning that Mercury's entire retrograde period is within the 6-week period that Venus is retrograde as well. So these two planets also help set up the eclipse season with the two eclipses on March 13, 14, as well as March 29th. And then at the end of February, which we're right in now at this time of this recording, February 27, 2025, all the planets are direct for about roughly a 5-day period. I say from the February 23rd to 28th. You could extend it a little bit into March 1st before Venus goes retrograde. So it's in that zone. So there was a little bit of momentum, but it starts to come to a standstill a little bit because of the first the Venus retrograde and then the Mercury retrograde, and then later I think it's at the I'll have to look at that the end of April when Pluto goes retrograde, and it's the first of the other outer planets that start that process. The feel this month is really a crossroads. It's really helping us come into a really major intersection and between the dreams and illusions of Pisces and Neptune, with the desire to forge a new mission, devote time and energy to something worthy of devoting to some kind of a project, a mission, a purpose, something worth getting into. And that's some of the major alchemy that's taking place with Pisces and Aries. We have our last Aries solar eclipse of this time period since last year, which will take place on March 29th. And it'll be also our first lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. So we had there was an eclipse in Virgo last year in I think it was in October. Was it October? No, it would have been in September. So we have some space here as that transition from, because of the lunar nodes, they also moved into Pisces, they also moved from Aries, Libra to Pisces, Virgo, North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. So that early period will start to kick off like, okay, now that the major eclipses are going to be primarily in Pisces and Virgo, but you can usually get some kind of an eclipse that's left over. And in this case, on March 29th, we have the leftover eclipse, which is a pretty profound one, and where that happens. One of the major keys to this is the 0 Aries point. I'm going to be mentioning this several times throughout this video. It gets really strongly involved in the month of March, and really is a really major key component of how 2025 can go. And I'll talk about why that's important, is that the March equinox point is the start of the zodiac. It's the alpha, whereas the 29th degree of Pisces is the omega. So you get the quote end of the traditional zodiac and the beginning of the emergence of a new energy at the start of the zodiac. And so having that point being activated, I think it's 12 or 13 times throughout the year, with March almost holding close to half of that energy there. So let's get into Venus retrograde. So it begins March 1st and goes through April 12th. So it kicks off a parade of an astrological shift for the planet, for humanity. Venus will station retrograde at 10 degrees 50 minutes Aries, near where both Mercury will station retrograde and where the March 29th solar eclipse takes place. So that 9 to 10 degree point is a really powerful point, as well as we get into things here. So yeah, so you can see that the Aries energy is really super highlighted and really coming alive during this particular time. Venus as a planet symbolizes the feminine principle, or the concept of yin. It connects us with a more receptive, energetic wavelength. It tends to operate more passively, but this is generally depending upon the archetypal sign that Venus is in. Venus retrograde helps us rewind and reflection and reel back to what we have and how we received in our lives. So Venus will be in Aries until March 27th when it retrogrades into the sign of Pisces until I think it stays in that sign until the early part of May when it gets into the early degrees of, or the end of April and early May when it gets into the sign of Aries, back into Aries. So it's really like shifting back and forth. It's also a time, anytime Venus goes retrograde, you know that we're moving into a time where there's a transition of the planet as the feminine, moving into a new metagoddess, a new incarnation of itself in a new sign. And in this case, Pisces is going to be that new sign when it first rises as a morning star in the, just before sunrise at the end of March. In fact, it's going to do that on the day that there is a solar eclipse as well. That's also the day when Mercury, there's a lot happening just on the 29th itself, which is just a loaded day. Also the sign when Mercury goes back into Pisces as well. So we're gonna look at that as we get through here. So after Mercury retrograde, we have after Venus retrograde, we have Mercury retrograde, and so you can see the dates there: March 14th through April 7th. Mercury stations retrograde 2 weeks after Venus stations, and will station at 9:35 Aries. That's just a half a degree away from the solar eclipse point at 9 degrees Aries. And it will be like Venus will be in the constellation of the Fish, just below the Pegasus constellation. And that's something there's a layer there with all of this. It would make for an extraordinarily extra long video, but to talk about the different stars in that area where Mercury and Venus are going retrograde, as well as like where that solar eclipse will take place at the end of March. So Mercury retrograde is not inherently negative, but does have an undeserved stigma of being the cause of a lot of problems, or at least being the total cause. I mean, certainly it can show up where we do have some issues around communications, especially technological issues, because we have such a heavy reliance on communication activity or communication technology. But it can also show up where in communications with others in person and on the phone and so forth. Some technology is involved in that, but it's really stressing. Like if you really want to be clear with somebody and do things, it's not going to be just an easy flow. You've got to be able to focus and concentrate and think creatively and be open to interruptions in that way. And just know that there's also a ton of other things happening, that it isn't just Mercury operating the void, playing the trickster. There's much more taking place in that time. So it's a time for us to connect into our creative centers and express our vision. We can also reflect upon past communication and issues we've had with others and see how we can connect more with our own truth and being able to kind of help ourselves to, what could be coming up and how we can improve and better our communication skills with others as well. The alchemy of Aries and Pisces. So this is something I'm going to be sprinkling throughout this presentation. I've already kind of connected in with it a bit. So March and April, and I'm going to be talking about this also in the month of April and maybe even to some degree a bit into the month of May. But they're special months for humanity. This overarching theme of Pisces, this Pisces-Aries or Aries-Pisces alchemy, has a lot to do with the alchemization of something or some new form that comes in uniquely. Pisces is a passive sign, an archetype that expresses itself through compassion, empathy, and dreams that manifest into reality. It operates through service to spirit and to others, to the divine. Pisces is really there without ego and just a sense of selflessness. But it's also very, very sensitive to the divine, to its heart and the emotions and feelings of others. So this is where it's going to be amplified. These energies of Pisces are going to be amplified. The same with Aries. Aries is a powerful initiator, so it's like the alpha force that wants to come through and take care of business and really get things accomplished and overcoming obstacles and utilizing its will and its instincts to take care of those things. So it's a highly reactive, fiery, strong-willed, and competitive sign or archetype. And watch out if Aries is really truly on something, a mission that it truly believes in. It's a very difficult one to stop. Really, there's only a few other signs that might be able to give it pause, like Scorpio or Leo, for example, depending on or another Aries, depending on the circumstances there. Together, they can idealize this as a heart-centered force of nature. I've got it. They can idealize this I was meant to say as a heart-centered force of nature, overcoming obstacles with great compassion and belief in a much higher purpose. So this is really a very significant, powerful energy, and one that we want to really truly connect with in our lives and show up that really makes sense for us. It's a combination of being able to get things done and accomplished and using our instincts and will, but also having heart and empathy to make sure that we're accomplishing things in a way that's understanding and meeting the needs of others too. So it's like having the sensitivities and the awareness of things, along with like being able to really be strong in our belief and wanting to accomplish what we want to accomplish. This next slide here, it doesn't have to be memorized. I'm sharing this to illustrate the true amazing, incredible stuff that is happening in the month of March and to some degree the month of April here. So on the left-hand side is all the stuff that's happening in March, this has a very little, nothing to do with, like, I'm not putting anything in here about Uranus or Pluto or Chiron or Eris or too much about, there's a little bit there about the sun, really not really talking about even the asteroids in here either. And that's pretty rare for that to happen. All the red highlighted air energies are like clusters, really, really strong clusters. And the 0 Aries point, and the 29th degree Pisces, is hit 5 times in the month of March. It's absolutely incredible. I don't know if I've seen that before since I've been practicing astrology. Began 15 years ago, and I'd have to go and do research to find out if this has ever happened this way in this kind of a manner. Mercury ingresses into Aries March 3rd. We have on the it stations retrograde, but then on March 20th, the equinox happens at 0 Aries. That's the March equinox. It's always at 0 Aries, start of the zodiac. And then Venus retrograding into 0 Aries on March 27th. So as it moves in, and then within the day, it moves into the 29th degree of Pisces. And then we have Mercury retrograding back to 0 Aries on the 29th. We have Neptune ingressing into the sign of Aries on March 30th, another super big event. And you can see this March 29th, at the end of March, from 27th through the 30th, all this activity happening. There's a little bit here in the early 20s of March equinox. There's a Sun-Venus conjunction and a Sun-Mercury conjunction. But really the bulk of it, maybe about a third of all of this, is at the last 4 days of March there. And so April, I'll put more attention in that area when I make the April video. But Mercury will ingress back into Aries on April 15th. And Venus will also do that on April 30th. So you can see here that they are showing up and adding to the Aries thing, and that some of the energy kind of continues into May a little bit with a Venus Neptune conjunction on May 2nd. So we'll that'll be something that we will discuss at a later time in about 3 to 4 weeks here. All right, so the next situation is this full moon eclipse on March 13th/14th, and this is happening very close to midnight Pacific time. It should be Pacific. I think it's Pacific Standard Time. I don't know if it's PST or PDT. I know it's the clocks change like in the second weekend of March. So that could be, well, it's either way, it's 11:54 p.m. Pacific time, and it'll be 2:54 a.m. Eastern time. And so this is an eclipse that'll be very visible in the Americas, North and South America, a little bit into Europe and the Pacific Ocean as well, and a little bit into Africa. But in this chart here, you can see the lineup already on March 13th and 14th in Pisces and Aries. You can see the stellium really, really strongly. And there's the moon out here in Virgo. So this eclipse is mostly about this sense of sacredness in the world, in service. How can we show up and be of service? How can what do we have in our lives that is sacred in our lives? And the sacred feminine in particular, with this Pisces Virgo energy here being really strongly activated. So this can be also a rise, especially with Virgo, of sacred sovereignty. Sovereignty is a really powerful quality of Virgo. We think of the sovereignty of the ancient priestess and what she does in her own life on a private level, but also in the public. It's her doing her thing for service, and then she is sovereign unto herself, meaning that she's not under the domination or the dominion of the masculine or the patriarchal energy. She's sovereign unto herself. She could be in relationship with others, but she is her own. She has her own governance and own dominion over herself. Certainly that's a sort of philosophy and connection and individuation that can be really helpful for all the signs, truly. But for Virgo, it's really vital that is expressed. And so it could be a way for us to connect into that part of ourselves more strongly during this total lunar eclipse or a full moon eclipse on the late on the very, very late on the 13th and early morning on the 14th, depending on where you happen to live. And if it's dark where you're living during these that evening period to early morning period of 13th, 14th, then generally you're going to be able to see this eclipse. But again, if you're in North America, in the US and Canada, Mexico, parts of Central America and or really all of Central America and South America, you're going to be able to see this eclipse throughout. And there will be a video, and there is going to be a video. Caitlin Castell and I are going to do a video just about this particular eclipse and this full moon and dive really deeply into that. So I'm not putting too much attention into this, but it is a very powerful event, and to have all these other things happen while the eclipse season is going on is pretty profound and not to be ignored. And one wants to tune into that. So it happens at 23:56 Virgo, and I got 11:54 p.m. Pacific time, 2:54 a.m. Eastern time. But the eclipse happens over several hours because it takes a while for the shadow of Earth to pass fully over the moon, or the moon's drifting into the shadow of the Earth during this time. So the totality can be anywhere from like 40 minutes to over an hour long. So it's a pretty long duration type of an eclipse, unlike a solar eclipse, which can only be a few minutes long typically. Then we are at the end of the month, we have this new moon eclipse, or a solar eclipse. It's only partial, so only part of the moon is covering the sun. The disk, only part of the solar disk is being covered by the moon. So this means that the moon is coming between the sun and the earth during this time. And that'll happen at 9 degrees Aries at 3:57 a.m. Pacific time. And I believe that's definitely Pacific Daylight Time. So just for those that are tuning into stuff, it's PDT. So you can see here on the chart, we see 9 degrees where this blue arrow here connecting into the sun and the moon there at 9. And you can see, again, see the lineup of planets here. This is really remarkable. And look at even between Saturn and Neptune on that day, there's only 5 degrees, close to 6 degrees of separation there. With Venus retrograde, Mercury does actually, in the same day, it does retrograde into Pisces a bit later in the afternoon. So you're going to get 5 planets or 5 points in there. And then if you include Ceres, that would make it 6. And something to note, which I'll be probably doing another video or a video for. I did one a few years back for Chiron and Aries. Well, Chiron and Aries are going to be conjunct a couple of times this year and another time next year, 2026, in the sign of Aries. And this is adding to sort of that Aries Pisces energy because they're having their own little party, if you will, in the sign of Aries there. So yeah, this eclipse is really primarily about getting ourselves together. Like what do we want to believe in? What do we believe is our purpose here? What does that represent for us? And are we living that? Is our soul's intent really being activated here? And what do we want to do with that? Or are we in alignment with our core truth? Are we in alignment with who we are and how we express ourselves out into the world? And what does that look like? Because we're going to talk about that 0 Aries point, but 9 degrees is a little bit more on the a little more maturation happening with Aries, and it's a really powerful point with Venus and Mercury also connecting within a degree or two of that point at the 9 Aries point, with them going retrograde and going over that degree 2 more times in March and in April as well. So something to really look at as a force, as a new fire arriving. Something wants to come through. Some big energy wants to be seen, wants to be heard in that way. So yeah, for those of you that have like 24, 25 degree Virgo, Pisces, and a 9 Aries energy, and within about 6 degrees of that, you really are going to be at the impact of this eclipse. And if there's any hard aspects, like if you've got something in Capricorn or Cancer, or in the sign of Libra, or maybe perhaps it's trining you in a fire sign like Sagittarius or Leo, this is definitely something you want to pay attention to that can have an impact. I've done several readings in recent months where people have something very close to that point where that 9 degree Aries mark is. And so I've been counseling or sharing about that, and to kind of tune into that, do a lot of like inner exploration, or maybe if it's a day you may want to like step into a whole new thing. It's like a new project and create a new dynamic. Maybe not necessarily in the middle of the exact eclipse, such as a very early morning Pacific time, or in Europe it'll be in the late morning, early afternoon, depending on where you are. This is an eclipse that's going to be visible in the very northern regions of the planet, in Canada and in Europe, Greenland, Iceland, the Arctic. So that's, there won't be very many people that'll be able to see this, but that's why there's probably 1 billion people will be able to see the solar, or sorry, the total lunar eclipse, and this will be only like a few million people, if that, to be able to see the maximum partialness of the eclipse. But millions more will be able to see at least a small portion of this partial eclipse in Europe and in Canada and Greenland and Iceland. Okay, so we move on. So here's just a graphic representation of all the different things that are taking place. And so you can see here that we have all the stuff that's highlighted in yellow. These are like really important time. And the red is kind of red and purple are the ones that are like more concentrated energy there. And so you can see like here, there's a lot more activity here. And then you've got like some additional activity, but most of it's in the second half of March. And then a little bit of a concentration at the very beginning with Venus stationing retrograde, Mercury Neptune conjunction, and then Mercury and ingressing into Aries. And then you start to get into the middle degrees or the middle of the month. And that's where the fireworks start to really take off, especially towards and at the end of March. So Venus, Mercury, Neptune, Sun, nodes, Moon, Saturn would obviously be thrown in here because there's a Sun-Saturn conjunction here. There is Saturn gets involved more strongly in April and May, as in the last degrees of Pisces, and it enters the sign of Aries on May 24th of 2025. And that will kick off the whole Saturn-Neptune conjunction period in the summer that will last all the way through the summer of Northern Hemisphere, all the way through February 20th, the exact eclipse of 2026. And then they'll still be within a degree through a portion of March 2026 as well. So the only other big couple of things that are happening, I haven't even really mentioned Jupiter, for example. Jupiter's in Gemini, and it will move into Cancer on June 9th of 2025. And so Jupiter's going to be playing an important role for this year, as it always does, but it's not quite as powerfully expressed as this month of March. So Jupiter's not like, it's not really strongly in this field. It's not even sextiling anything at that time either. It will square Neptune and Saturn in June of 2025. So we'll talk about that when I do the June video. So this is something to recognize and to really speak to more, is that there is the concept of alpha and omega, the beginning and the end. I mean, that's alpha and omega is the beginning and the end of the Greek alphabet, and kind of really represents this sort of like, what are we going to do as for humanity? What kind of a new story do we want to create? How do we want to evolve as on a level of consciousness, intelligence, heart, and beyond? What do we want to create? And so I feel like that and that we're also completing the old, and it just how happens too that we are at the end of the Kali Yuga period too. For some researchers, as 2025 is the end of that, and which is the end of a Kali Yuga is usually the bottom of it. Not the beginning or the middle of it, but not, and we get the bottom. So then we move into 300 years of transition. So this becomes even more strongly symbolic and spiritually significant here for humanity. So the alpha and omega symbolize the beginning and the end. These 2 points of the 360-degree window or wheel are zodiacally at 0 Aries and 29 Pisces. This is something astrologer Dane Rajar points out a lot in his book, Astrological Mandala, that he wrote many decades ago. Something definitely to look at. But it's about the Sabian symbols and about kind of a resurrection of Mark Edmund Jones's work back in the 1920s and 30s in his work, powerful work about the Sabian symbols. So alpha and omega, the points of 0 Aries and 29 Pisces, they come into the spotlight this year on numerous occasions during 2025. It is made more exceptionally rare due to the movements of the lunar nodes, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, and Saturn, as well as the sun's ingress into Aries every year that it does on or about March 20th, 21st, somewhere in that zone usually. And so since Saturn and Neptune both transit the points 3 times in 2025 and 2026, while Venus and Mercury do it 3 times apiece within just a few months. The lunar nodes transit it once, and the North Node in particular transited it in the month of January when they ingressed into from 0 degrees Aries into 29 Pisces. They move backwards, so as a normal movement, and so that happened in January. And then also the dwarf planet Ceres moved into the sign of Pisces on February 23rd, the same day that Mars stationed direct. And then it will move into Aries on May 16th, adding to this Pisces-Aries alchemical mix. And so I've got highlighted 5 times that these points get activated in the month of March. So there's 2 times in the month of April and 3 times in the month of May where they're getting activated. This includes the Ceres ingress in that month. And then in September and October with Saturn and Neptune moving, retrograding back into Pisces on those months as well. So you see one in February, 1 in January. So there's a total of 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 times where that point gets activated by Saturn, Neptune, Venus, Mercury, the North Lunar Node, the Sun, and then Ceres. That combination. And again, this would require some research to see how often this gets hit like this. I would be surprised if it's anywhere close to this, or how it's probably pretty darn rare. The Sun going into it, Mercury and Venus going into it, they all do that at least once a year. So 3 times is the bare minimum. And then the moon does that at least once a month. So I'm not including that because that's just a typical thing for the moon. But the rest of this is pretty rare, that combination. So the moon moves into the sign, the 0 Aries, on the 28th of March, and 29 Pisces on the 28th of March. So there is that. We can include, if you wanted to add in another point in there, that could make it 6. And otherwise, all months have a default of once, usually, with the moon. So we're seeing like this 0 Aries, the start, the beginning, and the completion at 29 Pisces. Like this is the bridge. This is the time where we're trying to cross a whole new river that we've never crossed before. And what do we want to co-create with the universe? That's what's on tap here. We're completing an old story for humanity, and we're transitioning to something brand new. Neptune and Aries. I'm going to be making a whole video about this, but I wanted to really start the conversation around this because we couldn't necessarily talk about Neptune and Aries without talking also about Saturn, because I threw a little bit in there about that, even though Saturn will not move into the sign of Aries until May. So on March 30th, 2025 at 5 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Neptune ingresses into the sign of Aries for the first time since the 1861 to 1875 period. And whenever, particularly outer planets, whenever they start to move into a new sign, typically Saturn and outward typically retrograde back into the previous sign for a little while. And so this is obviously happening with both Neptune and Saturn. And that happened also during 1861 to 1875. There was a lot of things that were taking place there, including the U.S. Civil War and finally the end of the slavery period for the U.S. I don't necessarily going to spend a lot of time talking about that right now, but it just means that it shows how powerful the movement from Pisces to Aries is for humanity. So the primary theme of Neptune Aries is about devoting to something worthy of defending and believing in. even if it turns out to be an illusion, which will tend to be discovered during this time. So, especially with Saturn coming in with Neptune, it will very likely be discovered. Whatever illusions that are there will start to be revealed more and more as this opens up. So you're seeing a lot already taking place. Neptune almost got to the sign of Aries in 2024. It was only one tenth of a degree short. We got to 29 degrees 55 minutes Pisces in the late spring of 2024, late spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. So Neptune is currently moving toward that point again at 29th Pisces point into 0 Aries. So, this is definitely something that bears a lot of awareness and watch, and to kind of be careful out there with that. All right. So this is also a time of emergence into a new cosmic individuation within humanity for each person, ideally, and really humanity more so on the whole. The cosmic emergence is rooted in the heart's evolution to merge with a divine unity energy, or at least take steps beyond the general adolescence that we are in of humanity on the whole. So we're still in, the post Enlightenment rational period and the mechanistic capitalism that we're in, and the profit margins, and we have global corporations that have immense wealth of enough, some of them with enough wealth to run small to mid-sized countries. So this is really, we've never really been in that kind of a thing, although there have been times in history, such as the certain British companies in when they were in the colonization period of North America and South America, where they were dominating, like the East India Trade Company with the spices, in North America, the Hudson Bay, and there was another corporation, and they really had, it was a conglomerates of very rich individuals that controlled a lot of shipping and so forth. So that's the best analogy that I can find in history currently, other than maybe looking at kingdoms, ancient kingdoms, and conquerors and sort of those kinds of things. So the Phoenician traders in the very ancient times before the Roman Empire, where they controlled a lot of the Mediterranean with their commercial trade. And so that was an empire, a business empire, if you will, at that time. So there have been other examples in history, but this is like the amount of wealth, the amount of power is, we are coming into a time where it's becoming more unprecedented. And so this is a chance, like when we see that Neptune, Saturn moving from Pisces to Aries, it usually denotes something new, a different, like a paradigm shift. And so what we're seeing today is intended to shift, and what it will shift into, that's what the debate is about. What is the argument? What is the speculation? So that's something I'm going to continue to discuss and talk about and work with, and connect with other astrologers about, and others beyond in the helper and healing community, to see what else is coming up here. So thank you all for being a part of this. I appreciate you watching this video all the way through here. Please like and subscribe if you do, and share with your friends. You can visit me at inspiralnexus.com. I do astrology readings for a living. I teach classes, night sky events. I live in Oregon, Southern Oregon specifically, and I also do astrocartography. In addition to that, I co-facilitate with Caitlin Castell at mystaralchemy.com, and we also do we've been starting to do full moon videos together. And so that's a new series that we've come up with. And also stay tuned. I'll be having my own online courses, some basic astrology courses. So that's something that I am going to be creating in time for to bring that out. So if people want to really learn some basic materials and go beyond just what does the astrologer say, but maybe learn some for yourself. I recommend taking those courses when they after the course they come out in the coming months. So look for that, before by the middle of the year, I would say most likely. So I wish you all a happy month of March and to live your soul's intent and to be well out there in the world. Take care.